Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more waterfowl patterning, and today we've got another very interesting combination to try. I'm definitely curious to see what it does because it's kind of a continuation of what we started a couple weeks ago to see if this actually works, and if so, how well does it work. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what kind of results we can get. But for the setup I brought out here today, I got out this old Mossberg 500 AT, but it has the old Mossberg Select choke on it, which is essentially Mossberg's version of a poly choke. It's an adjustable choke where you can tighten or loosen this collar, and it changes the little fins on the inside of the barrel, tighter or looser, to adjust your choke constriction. And a lot of people really hate these, and some of it stems from the way they look. They're big and bulky and ugly on the end of your barrel, and other ones say that it is an absolute terrible performer. Now, if you didn't see, here's the card for the video we did a couple weeks ago, but we've been testing steel waterfowl shells through this choke to see if you can do it, and if so, what actually happens. Now, yes, you can absolutely shoot a steel waterfowl shell through one of these chokes, but you can't go absolutely hog wild and crank this down and get it super tight, or else you will damage something. So for today, since we're running a steel waterfowl shell through it, I have it screwed to its improved cylinder constriction, which is right at a 720, which should be perfectly fine for any kind of steel load that you would run through it. So today we've moved up to a little bit larger of a steel pellet, and we're going to find out how this actually does with that little bit larger of a steel load. And as for the shell I've got to run through it today, I brought out some of these, some of the Kent Fasteel 2.0 loads. They are a 12 gauge, 2 3/4 inch, 1 1/16 ounce payload of steel BB, supposedly moving about 1,550 feet per second. Now, we've tested these quite a bit on the channel last winter with some pretty decent performance. They weren't anything groundbreaking, but they did the job just fine. But these are a steel BB, which is a little bit larger than the steel 2s we had run through that choke previously. So how is it going to do if we move up to a little bit larger pellet that's going to be forcing its way through that choke a little bit harder? It's definitely going to be pretty interesting to see how this combination actually performs. But as for today's test, everything is set up the same as usual. I'm not handicapping this combination at all. I've got the duck target at 40 yards, and I've got the chronograph so we can get our velocity from the shell as well. So let's get you guys to view this target. We'll take the shot and see just what this old Select choke can do with a little bit larger steel BB pellet. Alright, so that round gave us 1447 through the chrono. The boss claim is 1550, but from what I can remember, mid 1400s is what we had been seeing out of these shells, so I believe that's pretty normal for what these are typically running. And to be honest, they might perform a little bit better at that little bit lower velocity than what the box says we should be seeing. Either way, I don't think it's anything too strange to see up here, but what does our target actually look like? What kind of a pattern did that combo give us? Let's go down and take a look and see what we got. Alright, so now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and this is what we got for a pattern. Now, I do think right off the bat we were just a touch low and a touch off to the right, which was most likely me more than anything else, and I have a sneaking suspicion that as you adjust the choke constriction on that old Select choke, that it probably shifts your point of impact a little bit out here at 40 yards or so. So it's probably just me more than anything else, but that's why we use the backer so we can see our actual pattern. Now, we probably still would have had this duck come down out of the sky, since we did have one right through the upper chest there. But if that pattern was centered up a little bit better, it really wouldn't be that terrible. And these are a steel BB, so if you're going to be goose hunting with them, you're going to have a little bit larger of a target than that duck as well. Now, we do have to keep in mind that these are a BB pellet in a 2 3/4 inch shell, so we just don't have a super high pellet count to work with. And really, the main core area of that pattern, just off the bottom right edge or so of that duck paper in that area, really isn't that bad, and it would absolutely get the job done. Now, we definitely had a few flyers and stuff up there at the very top right corner, and maybe a few little stragglers down there at the bottom left, so it's definitely not a perfect pattern. And these shells are definitely not the highest quality or the best performing shells we've tested either, so at the end of the day, I would call this a usable pattern. It is pretty much about what I expected to see. It's not great, but it's definitely far from terrible as well. If we had that centered up a little bit better, it would definitely look a little bit better than it does now, I would say. So at the end of the day here, if that's what you had, you could absolutely go out and hunt ducks or geese or anything like that with it and be good enough out to 40 yards. Do I think it's as good as a modern waterfowl choke or something would be with these shells? Probably not, mainly around the edges, but still, I mean, that is is gonna work if it's what you had to work with. And based on what some people are saying and thinking about these old select chokes and poly chokes, you would initially probably expect to see a whole lot worse than that. So the fact that we have a usable pattern down here at 40 yards with a steel BB load has to say that that is not a terrible choke at the end of the day as far as performance goes. So I guess I'll leave this one up to you guys, and you can let me know your thoughts about it in the comments. Is it a good enough performance for this combination for you to want to take it out? I don't know. You can let me know all that down in the comments, I guess. Okay, and here's the wad from that shell, and it's definitely nothing fancy, but as you can see, it's definitely starting to get a little banged up. It's got these little crinkles down here at the base of the pedals where it looks like the pedals kind of jammed back into the base a little bit. We do have a couple tiny little pinholes starting to poke through on the edges here, but nothing that I'm too worried about. But this does tell me that we're probably looking at about the limit here of these shells with this BB shot steel going through that particular choke. That's about as tight as what I would want to run that choke with these shells. But there's nothing stuck down in there or anything like that, so I think the wad did its job as good as what it could have done through today's setup combo anyway. But this is probably about the limit of what we can do with these, I would say, based on how this wad looks. Alright, y'all. Well, what did you think about that performance right there? Is it anything groundbreaking or anything special to write home about or anything like that? No, it's definitely not the best we've seen. It's not the worst we've seen by a long shot either. But considering what the shell is and the setup we're running it through with that select choke, I would say that's pretty decent. Considering the fact that it's even a usable 40-yard pattern at all tells us that this combination would work if it's what you had to work with. You might not have the best patterning setup in the duck blind, but hey, you would be taking them down just as well as anybody else. So I guess you can leave all your thoughts down below. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Do you have an old select choke or a poly choke or anything like that? And have you run steel shells through it? And if so, what kind of performance have you seen out of them? And is there another load, whether it be lead, steel, bismuth, whatever, that you want to see us try through that combination? Let me know all that down below. But I guess at the end of the day here, that is what I would consider pretty middle of the road. It's not fantastic, it's not terrible, but it's usable if it's what you had available to you. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.